I wanted to do justice to all the adults, parents, and teens that I've spoken to and worked with over the years. So I thought, what better than Dyspraxia, DCD, and mental health to be presented by someone not long from their adolescence who has dyspraxia, DCD, has had their own mental health struggles, and advocates and talks to teenagers about mental health. Sarahann and I have attended talks previously, and we have mentioned mental health briefly. But tonight we both decided that it's important to highlight the struggles some teenagers with dyspraxia, DCD experience with their mental health. So we will mention anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide ideation. They'll just be mentioned. It's important that we talk about this and highlight it as it is happening, and there's a lack of support, resources, and awareness for children and teenagers with dyspraxia, DCD. This is Sarahann's unique journey, and she is willing to share it with others going forward. If you are triggered in any way, please feel free to take a break, and Sarahann will put up texts of helplines if you feel you need to talk. We also want this evening to be as interactive as possible, and Sarahann will talk to you about how you can do that, and we will also have time for questions after Sarahann has presented. I was reflecting earlier on why I should do this talk this evening, and as I cannot connect with you all face to face, which is more the pity because I love the chats at the end, and being a therapist, my work is all about connection, I thought I would share what I reflected on. And also coincidentally, today on LinkedIn, I saw research that Professor Amanda Kirby, CEO of Do It Solutions, did on the impact on the quality of life of parents of children with DCD. And what came up was that their quality of life physically was not impacted, but mentally it was. Parents' work life was affected and their emotional well-being as well. So now I'm going to share with you my reflection. So I'm a counsellor and a psychotherapist, but I also was that mum that worried about her children and took years of advocating and banging on doors to get a diagnosis. I was that mum that woke up wondering what time he would get out the door to school or if he would get out the door at all. I was that mum that sat on my children's bed at night listening to how anxious they were about the following day in school. I was that mum that worried throughout the day and waited for the phone call from school or from her children. I was that mum that tried so hard to get the supports to help their children in school with endless phone calls and meetings. I was that mum that tried in vain to explain what dyspraxia DCD was, and yes, I got those looks and comments too. I was that mum that helped her children through the sensory overload release when they got home from school. I was that mum that tried to wash and make comfortable the school uniform that was so uncomfortable and scratched at their skin. I was that mum that tried to make the same lunch every day. I was that mum that brought your lunch and books to school when you forgot them. I was that mum that helped through the long process of homework every evening. I was that mum that watched her children try at tasks and only succeed sometimes and feel not good enough. I was that mum that brought you to OT, counsellors, doctor's appointments. I was that mum that watched her children navigate through friendships and heartache. I was that mum that sat with their child when they could not go to school. I was that mum that made endless phone calls and trips to school. I was that mum that fought and advocated for her children. I was that mum that met Harry and Faye from Dyspraxia DCD Ireland and got great support from them and other parents, at last people that understood. I was that mum that delighted in their daughter's triumphs when their hard work and perseverance paid off. I am that mum that supports positive mental health, strength and resilience in myself firstly and in my daughters. I am that mum that watched heartbreak when COVID-19 struck and one daughter had to study online after finally finding her place in life with study and friends. I am that mum that watched the heartbreak of my daughter deferring her year in college due to COVID-19 having an underlying health condition. In my despair and watching this happen to other teenagers, I started a team group for teenagers with dyspraxia DCD and embarked on my journey back to college to gain the qualifications to help. I was terrified, as let's just say school wasn't exactly the best journey for me, and I wanted to gain the qualifications to help. So I contacted an educational psychologist, firstly to find out how I learn. And then, yes, my eyes were opened that I have dyspraxia DCD myself and ADD. So I too was that adolescent that forgot her books and took forever to get organised. I was that teen that couldn't take notes down from the board in time and took forever with my homework. I was that teen whose hand and arm ached when they wrote for long. I was that teen who felt awkward, wasn't in the popular group, didn't fit in, spoke out of turn and stumbled on her words. I was that teen that felt constantly anxious and in low mood. I was that teen that was clumsy and not good at sports. I am that adult that is taking all those experiences that I have gained over the years and combined with the qualifications that I now have, I'm hopefully able to give a lot back to people who are experiencing a similar situation today. So now I'm going to hand over to Sarahann, and she will go through her experiences and also discuss how we can work through this together.
Hello, everybody. That was really wonderful that my mom just gave. That really made me emotional hearing that, because it did sum up the journey that we have had together. So that was really beautiful. So thank you, Mom. So like my mom said, my name is Sarahann Mooney. I am 20 years old and I'm currently studying English and music in DCU. I am a musician and a writer. Those are my passions, and I was diagnosed with dyspraxia DCD when I was 12. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mental health and dyspraxia in adolescents, aka young people. I'm going to be talking a bit about my experiences, a bit about others, what others have shared with me, and how we can combat that and how we can kind of learn to deal with it and understand how they intertwine. Like my mom said, that just a quick trigger warning that there will be certain things mentioned about suicide and self-harm. So just to be aware of that, that will be in the presentation further along. Okay. So, there we go. So a question you might be wondering, or a question I often get asked is, why talk about mental health and dyspraxia? How are they interlinked? Why do this presentation? I mean, there are so many things about dyspraxia that you could talk about. Why mental health? Well, the reason why I personally think it's important is we know that young people, teenagers especially, are going through changes. It's a hard time of their life mentally, and we know that there's a high number of young people suffering from mental health issues. And having dyspraxia can make that even more challenging because there are certain things that you have to face with on top of just being a teenager. Like for me, being a teenager with dyspraxia meant a lot more. I had to focus on my coordination and how to improve that. Learning how to ride a bike was 10 times more difficult for me, and I wanted to fit in. My hand would hurt from writing in school. So many other things, and being clumsy and being the one that was bad at sports made me feel like other people were judging me. All these things can have an impact on your mental health. So a majority of the teenagers that I've spoken to that also have dyspraxia all say the same thing, that their mental health does suffer. And of course, there are challenges that we have to face having dyspraxia, but that of course is nothing to be ashamed of at all. So I turn to you guys and ask you to think, what are the biggest challenges that young people with dyspraxia have to face? So if you go to www.menti.com and you put in the code, you can type some answers in and they'll pop up on the screen here. So the code is 4745280. So that's 4745280. And if you go to www.menti.com, you should be able to type in your answers and they'll pop up on the screen for me here. So I'll just give you guys a minute to do that. Okay, there's a few things coming up there. Great. If I go back actually to the other question. There's another question that you can answer as well as the self-care question. There is the what are the biggest challenges young people with dyspraxia face? So that should be there too when you put in the code. Okay, cool. We're getting some answers now. Okay, good. Okay, so some examples, a lot of people said lack of understanding, and that's a big one because being misunderstood as a young person is so frustrating, and that's going to have an impact on your mental health. Friendships are really difficult because you feel isolated, you feel different, because unfortunately a lot of people pick up on if there's something different about you. A lot of dyspraxic kids get bullied, unfortunately. Planning, anxiety, being overwhelmed, exclusion, feeling accepted, feeling weird. Organization is really difficult. There's a lot of pressure. School has a lot of pressure on you. Writing an essay, I can relate to that one. Writing an essay right now. Dealing with the diagnosis, coming to terms with it. Yeah, these are, if you guys can see on the screen, there's so much things that as a dyspraxic person that we have to deal with, and we have to regulate, and we have to understand, stumbling over words. These are so good. These are making me feel good because I'm like, yeah, I can relate. Judgment, planning, study, social settings, those are all really, really great answers. Thank you. So if we go back to here. So I'm going to talk about anxiety, because which was one of the answers that came up. Anxiety is very common for young people with dyspraxia. Anxiety is mainly around school. It was for me, making friends, relationships, and self-identity. So for me, school was a big source of anxiety. I would have panic attacks nearly every day, and I couldn't even get to school. I missed a lot of school because I was so anxious. And like my mom saying, you know, she'd be in the car with me and I'd be having a panic attack trying to get in the door, and it'd be really difficult. It'd be really hard to focus in class when I'm feeling so anxious all the time, because of all the problems relating to school, like the organization being difficult, the making friends being difficult, and the sports being difficult. All of it just made school a big source of anxiety. And if I was to walk back in those doors even now, I know my body would have that reaction. Like it would still feel anxious there. So there's also anxiety around making friends because people feel different. It can also be difficult for someone with dyspraxia to organize their thoughts. So trying to talk to people, it can be really hard to get the words out correctly that you want to say. So I remember at the time, I only had really one in school, and in my childhood, I only had one friend. But in secondary school, I bounced from friend group to friend group because I'd end up being too weird for them, and they would just start picking on me and stuff. So that was really hard. Relationships are hard. Telling the person that you're dating, hey, I have dyspraxia, and them understanding it is really difficult. I luckily right now have an amazing boyfriend who totally understands my dyspraxia. We joke about it together. He really is amazing, but that doesn't always come quickly. I know I had some really bad experiences relationship wise. Self-identity is a thing as well. It's like you're trying to understand who you are, dyspraxia wise, how that fits in with your life. Every teenager struggles with self-identity, but having dyspraxia can make you feel like, am I just the weird one? And anxiety needs to be taken seriously. There needs to be supports there, because I can't speak for every school at all, but my school didn't really have a lot of that. Like, I remember one time I was having a full-blown panic attack and my teacher yelled at me and told me to go back to class. Like it's serious. Like it can lead to things such as skin picking, which is something that's common, loss of appetite or overeating. I couldn't eat in the morning. I couldn't eat breakfast because I associate school with anxiety, and that would be the morning. So even to this day, I still struggle to eat in the mornings because I associate getting up with anxiety. And obviously, if my stomach is in a knot, then I can't eat. And social exclusion, I think one of the biggest things my mom can remember as well is getting me to go to maybe extracurricular activities and stuff. And if you're too nervous to go, if you're too anxious to go, you're going to feel left out. So it's really important that we create a good environment and that we take anxiety seriously for adolescents with dyspraxia. and of course, depression. So low mood and self-esteem is common for young people with dyspraxia. Like I said, I've spoken to people with dyspraxia, and it's something that a lot of us have in common. And like I have been saying, you often feel different, you often feel stupid or isolated. Like I was really hard on myself because in school I would work so hard at my spellings or work hard in leaving cert to try and get the best grades I could. But the education system just didn't fit the way my brain worked. So I would watch kids who were just kind of naturally academic do so well, but not have worked anywhere near as hard as I could. And that is a devastating feeling. So I ended up believing that I was stupid and that I was the weird one and that I just shouldn't, even when I do try, blah, 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 I don't get anywhere. And also, yeah, I just went through a phase, like when I look back at my schooling years, it's, for me personally, it's quite painful. It's years of crying myself to sleep, years of like feeling like I wasn't worthwhile. And I think that did really intertwine with my dyspraxia because a lot of my problems in school were based around it. And it was just quite hard for me. And this is something I noticed that's quite common for people with dyspraxia. And yeah, depression should be taken very seriously in all young people. It's a problem right now, having a mental health crisis. So depression does lead to self-harm, eating disorders. So that can be overeating or not eating or abusing how you consume food. And of course, a lot of people lose their lives to depression, so suicide can occur. So we need to watch out for our friends, watch out for ourselves, notice the signs. The signs from self-harm can include, like I was saying earlier, finger picking is self-harm, cutting yourself, burning yourself, and obviously not eating and not looking after your body in the correct way is a sign of self-harm. So those are things that need to be watched out for and taken seriously. So COVID-19, I know you all are sick of hearing about it. I am. The news to be on, and I'm just like, no, even though obviously we need to stay informed. COVID-19 can really impact the mental health of people with dyspraxia because it's a change in school. The routines are changing now, everything's changing, the timetables are changing, the timings are changing, and that can be overwhelming for someone with dyspraxia. And masks are also causing sensory overloads for people who don't like things touching their face. Lack of connection with others, like some of them must be really missing their friends, and that might be one of the only sort of nice parts about school that's kind of gone. Worry around exams. I think everyone can all imagine how hard it is for the Leaving Cert students right now. I know I was stressed out of my mind, and if I had to deal with a global pandemic on top of that, I would be very, very overwhelmed. And studying online is difficult. I know for me, college-wise, sitting still and staring at a screen really doesn't work for the way I learn. I'm a getter-upper, I'm a doer, I'm a go to a lecture hall and you know. And so online it's harder now. It's hard to now you have to deal with a whole new system, which is unfortunately not great for the mental health. But now that I have yammered on and on and on about the negatives, it's time to do some positivity on what do I do? I've realized that I'm struggling with my mental health. I realized that my dyspraxia is overwhelming me. What can I do? So how do we look after our mental health? So understanding how dyspraxia affects an individual and set up coping methods. I can't express this enough. Every single person with dyspraxia is an individual. Everyone has different issues. Like I was saying before, all of the symptoms and all the things I was speaking about earlier may not be for everyone. Some of them might be for you, like my mom was saying, my sister has dyspraxia and my mom does, the three of us do. So there are things that we notice that are different about each other. So it's important to know, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. How do I deal with that? An example, one of the obvious ones is typing the exams, because for me, my hand physically can't write for more than 2 minutes. It will cramp up. So typing really helps for the exams. catering it to around you. For me, I didn't like using the laptop every single day in school because it just created another thing for me to lug around. And also, I just didn't like people picking on me about it. So it just didn't work for me. Another example is organization. I struggle with organizing myself to school. So another way to combat that is to have everything in enough different folders. And if that works for you, that way when you're putting things in the locker, you're just grabbing it and going. I struggle, like for me, I'm like, okay, I struggle to read online and do my college work online. So I'm going to try and set up a Zoom call with my friends every single Wednesday, every single Friday. So I have something to look forward to. And that when I'm studying online, I take breaks and I get up and I do movement exercises. Those really help. Self-care, I cannot express this also enough. And self-care is individual to everyone. That can go from meditation, mindfulness, to playing video games in a healthy way, to watching your favorite TV show. And there are loads of different things that you can do, and I'll dive into that more a bit later. Do the things you love, they shape you. Dyspraxic talent is unreal. So like I was saying earlier, we can feel really bogged down in the education system. It can be very overwhelming. But I find any dyspraxic person that I've spoken to, when they love something, they are so talented at it. So for me, that's music and writing. And I play guitar and I play the flute. And the coordination can be hard. And don't get me wrong, I've had to practice a lot, but I love it. So I'm happy to practice at it. And now I excel in it. I hope I do anyways, because I'm studying in college. And I write. And those things are therapeutic to me. So if I'm stressed out, if I'm having a sensory overload, or I'm having a bad dyspraxic day and everything's just going wrong, or if I'm feeling low, I'll grab out the guitar, sing something that means something to me, or I'll write a poem or a short story about what I'm feeling and put my sort of words into them. Of course, young people should talk to a trusted friend or an adult if they think that their lives are in danger, or somebody they know is in danger, or they just need advice on what to do and they're struggling. Talk to a friend, an adult. That could be a teacher, that could be a parent. Hopefully everybody has someone to go to, and I know that cannot be the case for everybody, but try to find somewhere safe. And you don't need to fit like a certain criteria to reach out for help. Like I know sometimes people feel like, well, my problems aren't as bad as Sally. So like, no, like if you, any stage you feel like you need help, you don't have to be on the verge or anything or in crisis. Reach out for help, because everybody needs it from time to time. If you don't really know anyone you can talk to, or you just feel like talking to somebody who doesn't know you, you can use call or text helplines. They're there for you in times of crisis. They're there for you when you need to talk or need to vent out about something or try and find help. And I'll give resources at the end of the lecture. And of course, personally, I'm a huge advocate for therapy. And my mom is a psychotherapist, she was saying, and she inspires me. She's amazing at her job. She inspires me as somebody with dyspraxia, because she was told that she was stupid and that she would never succeed in college. But that's not the case at all. She's gone back, she's got her degree, which is just so amazing. And therapy can really help you, especially if a therapist understands dyspraxia like my mom does, and they can help you out with those things, and they can help you with defining the coping methods that you as an individual need. Because it's hard for me to, sit here and tell you, oh, this is what works for everybody, because of course, like I said, everyone has individual needs. So if you find yourself a good therapist that understands dyspraxia and understands mental health, well, hopefully they do, because that'll be their job, that can really work and really help you in setting up coping methods and things for the individual. Okay. What the heck? Oh, poetry. So, or is this a, yeah, actually. So I'm going to read you some poetry that I wrote about when I was feeling down or when I was feeling emotional. And like I said earlier, it's a therapeutic way to talk about something or to deal with something. For me, poetry is a huge source of that. Poetry for me is self-care. So I'm going to read to you to show you that dyspraxic people can be talented, because I think we all are. So my first poem is called Teardrops. So, Teardrops by Sarahann Mooney. Why do you fall? Is it a compelling mission? You're summoned by beats, the beats that pump the blood. But the beats barely seem bearable, or seem to be bearable. Atmosphere. Is it the clicking of the pens next to the dominance? One word, teacher, teacher. I swear that doesn't mean power. That means teardrops, beating blood, sweating. I can't hear anymore. So yeah, that's my poem, Teardrops. It's about having a panic attack and that feeling and how horrible it can be. So my next poem is Emotion, me just trying to deal with emotions and me learning like, what is an emotion? Why do I have them? Screw them, I want to be an emotionless robot. It was a time when I was like, why do I have to feel things? So I wrote this. So emotion. Sometimes things, they make us so sad. We wish there was a tap. We could turn it all off. But what if we did? How would we know? How would we know what we are, what we feel? Leave the switch on. Let it run its course. The river will keep flowing. The leaves will still drop. Let it all be. It will be okay. Trust. So this poem for me is the moment I realized that it's okay to feel things. And that's so important, and especially around mental health, to talk about how we feel. And for having dyspraxia, with all the thoughts running around in my head and me finding it difficult to organize my thoughts, this poem really helped me come to terms with them, and that it's okay to feel things and it's okay, you know? So yeah, earlier you guys answered, can you think of any examples of self-care? And I think this isn't so important for me to ask, because for me, I feel like it's individual for everybody. So if I should be there, if I go to the next one, there it is. So if you haven't answered this, you feel free to go answer it now. It should be in the chat. Just a quick reminder, w.menti.com. Code is 4745280. So for everyone, it's completely different. Everyone has their own thing. So exercise is one, which is a great one. Not for me, as my mom knows, I'm a lazy little butt. But exercise can be really helpful. Scientifically, it's proven the mind is that your mental health is connected to your physical health. So exercise can be important. It's important to know not to over-exercise, because a lot of these self-care things can be abused and healthy. Music, definitely one for me. Healthy eating, yep, it's important to eat healthy, and obviously we can all have an unhealthy snack, unhealthy food every now and again, but it's important to be careful not to overeat or undereat. No unnecessary drama. Yes, I love that. That's so, like, girl, bye, like, get out of my life with your unnecessary drama. Yeah, it's perfect. It's a good idea to keep good people around you talking. Yeah. Hobbies, of course. Light a candle, that's nice. My mom does that. Laughter is the best. Long walk in the countryside, watching a fit. I could read these all day. Eating chocolate, yes, girl. Sleep is good, but be careful not to oversleep or undersleep. Try and have a healthy balance. Mindfulness, Xbox games, yeah, healthy though. Make sure that you're not overplaying and that you're using it as a correct time of fun. Having a bubble bath, yeah, changing your clothes. Yeah, I love going out and buying some new clothes. Talk to a friend, take time for yourself. Yeah, these are all amazing. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'd like to sort of finish off, kind of nearly finished, with a quote from Queen Taylor Swift. Everyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with her. But she says that I don't think having scars or having ghosts makes you any less of a person than someone who never took chances and never made mistakes. And that means a lot to me because it reminds me that having dyspraxia and having those difficulties around that don't make me any less of a person, and that life is hard and it's a lot of chances, but you're going to make mistakes along the way. Everybody gets rejected. Everybody makes mistakes along the way. And I wear my dyspraxia with pride now. I'm happy to have it. Like, it makes me creative and it makes me able to write amazing poetry, I feel, and playing amazing music. So I think we should really be proud of everything you go through. Like, the fact that you have dyspraxia and the fact that you deal with the mental health difficulties you do makes you one amazing person to deal with it. Like, anyone I meet who's dyspraxic and goes through, I'm like, you a queen. So that's kind of what this quote really, really means to me. And then the last slide is an important slide. So these are just some supports and services that you can use. So you can text Spun Out to 5080. It is a free 24-hour text line. So you can even add that number into your phone right now if you want. So it's there in case you need it. Samaritans is a call and text line. Childline is for if you need to talk, a call and text line, but it's for under 18s only. Jigsaw, I believe, do free therapy. So that could be useful to anyone that needs to check it out. I'm not sure how long the waiting list will be, but you can definitely check it out. And then there's the LGBTQ plus helpline, which is if you're struggling with your gender identity or your sexuality, and if it's affecting your mental health and you need to reach out, that's the number there for you.